We'll kick things off with some plenary presentations before breaking up into 2 breakout sessions. So maybe it's a good idea to start thinking which session you would like to join. In one breakout room, we'll delve into empirical evidence regarding the effectiveness of various interventions, focusing on fact-checking and on media literacy activities. And meanwhile, in the other breakout room, we will highlight the practical tools developed by BENEDMO for fact-checkers. Throughout the webinar, you can utilize the chat to ask any questions that you may have, and our team will be moderating the chat and either answer your questions directly in the chat, or we will ask your question to the speaker at hand. Now let's welcome our first speaker of today, Johan Oomen. He is the head of research and heritage at Sound and Vision, and he's also the coordinator of BENEDMO. Johan, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we thought it was good to kick things off by traveling back 3 years when the first 8 hubs were launched, and the first 8 hubs from the European Digital Media Observatory network. These 8 were joined by another 6 in 2022. So the map that you see now, you see that all EU member states plus Norway are now represented in the EDMO network, and that's not a small feat. When EDMO was first announced in 2020, and as one of the main initiative to tackle disinformation, there was always this promise about bringing expertise together of all member states, and it's quite, let's say, pleasing to see now that all the member states are in fact connected. Next slide, please. So they are working together on 4 action lines. So this, I just want to highlight some of the work that is done in the, say, overarching EDMO network. And this EDMO is coordinated by the European University in Florence with a number of partners, and all the hubs, including BENEDMO, are also working alongside these 4 lines. So basically the work that we do in Flanders and in the Netherlands also contributes to something bigger, namely the European scope. Just some highlights. So on the topic of media literacy, EDMO worked on mapping the landscape of media literacy offering, and also including more and more also AI literacy. Then also promoting a knowledge exchange between actors offering media literacy resources, but also working on standards and best practices. So basically, what this is an ongoing process, but this activity supports the sharing of media literacy resources also across EU member states, which is really strong. Second point relates to fact-checking. Maybe you are aware of the monthly fact-checking briefs that EDMO circulates. If you're not yet on the mailing list, make sure to be on it. This is super insightful and very much to the point. Secondly, one of the sort of the visions behind EDMO is also how to orchestrate research in between fact checkers from 2 or more countries. So that's also done. And also on the EDMO platform, there is ways that actually support the this research. Next slide, please. Just 2 screenshots of what the EDMO central website looks like. This is an overview of, say, some of the latest developments in the network. So all kinds of publications that are shared. Next slide, please. And this talks about different findings, and they are ordered they are easily searchable on the website of EDMO. And these are just two examples of a lot more resources that are shared that support fact-checking. Next slide, please, because there's two lines of inquiry more. So the third is, so after media literacy and fact-checking, the third is research. So there's a repository of relevant scientific articles on the website. And also, I think the third slide is super important. The fact that these very large online platforms, they to be able to inquire how platforms like Meta, X, and so on operate, it's important to have access to data. And EDMO works alongside other actors to make sure that, well, to make sure that's difficult, but to really encourage these data sets to become available. And it's important to do this because from a broad European perspective, there's just more weight and more pressure we can put on these actors to share data in a way that academic research can be conducted. And finally, on the topic of fact-checking, there is work where EDMO monitors the latest policy development at the EU national and industry levels, and also provides recommendations to policymakers on potential improvements to responses to disinformation, and that includes self and co-regulation. As part of this, also the code of practice is one of the areas of analyses. Yeah, so this is what I have. I just would like a reminder how like the overall EDMO vision is now materializing in many shapes and forms before we dive into to EDMO. And with this, it's my pleasure to give the floor to the second speaker, Christina Stoomp. She is head of the Media Convergence and Social Media Unit of the European Commission. So, Christina, we're super pleased to have you join us and set the stage for our event. And the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. It is my pleasure to be here at today's webinar. And first and foremost, I am here to thank you, to thank BENEDMO for all the important work that it has been doing in the past 3 years, and also best wishes for the continuation. I believe that the rich program of this webinar also illustrates very well of the important contribution that BENEDMO has made in these past years. Let me indeed set out how this fits also into the Commission's policy to fight the spread of online disinformation. In short, we have 3 main pillars to that I would like to point in this regard, because it's also very important for all the discussions, I believe, that you will be having this afternoon. So the Commission's policy to fight disinformation is based on the one hand, on one pillar, legislative pillar, that is the Digital Services Act, that imposes on very large online platforms obligations to mitigate systemic risks, for example, also regarding disinformation and also electoral processes. Then a second pillar that is also tied to that has been already mentioned, is the Code of Practice on Disinformation, that contains important commitments from online platforms to reduce the spread of disinformation, but where also other players, for example, fact-checkers and civil society participants are signatories, helping a good implementation of the code. And the third pillar is EDMO and its hubs. And indeed, as explained, EDMO is a very rich community, and that is consisting of a network of hubs covering the entire EU, with the idea to be able to react to the national specificities and to offer solutions, to offer media literacy programs, fact-checking that is tailor-made for the territory concerned. At the same time, the strength of EDMO is that these hubs can join their forces together to have more impact on the EU level. And for example, one example for this can be in the future the collaboration in preparing for example, on the European elections, or to pull off joint investigations, joint projects that can be much more impactful if done together. I also would like to share 3 important novelties tied to that. One is related to the Code of Practice on Disinformation. So just 2 days ago, on Tuesday, the signatories have published their reports on the implementation of the Code of Practice on Disinformation. And I invite you to consult these reports, or at least specific parts that may be of interest to you. There are interesting data, for example, important for the fact-checking community. Just to share one, for example, the new data provided by Meta indicates that actually 47% of Facebook users who are seeing a fact-checking label that has proven content as false are not going ahead with sharing this content with their friends while they intended to do so. So I think this really shows the impactfulness of fact-checking, and I think it's good to have this data. Also, these reports show the measures how notably platforms are preparing for the European elections. So what measures are they putting in place to protect the electoral processes? And this brings me also to the other important novelty that are the election guidelines that the Commission has issued also 2 days ago, so on Tuesday. And these guidelines are also, I believe, quite important for your community, because these election guidelines recommend various measures that are actually fostered by the community like yours. Just a few examples. The elections guidelines recommend to put media literacy measures in place, and in this regard also to collaborate with national media literacy entities, so basically communities like yours, to put media literacy measures in place that are adapted to the specific language or territory. Then also to apply, for example, inoculation measures, so pre-banking for narratives that are expected, or to nudge users to check content before sharing it with other users. So I think these are important elements for your community to build on. Also, the guidelines are underlying fact-checking, and also the guidelines highlight the importance to work together with civil society organizations, and notably also BENEDMO and its election task force. So here you can see that in the policy of the European Commission, we are very much building on the work that is done by your community. This is also the case notably regarding the Code of Practice on Disinformation that I mentioned. This is important because the code actually includes various commitments regarding collaboration with fact-checkers, integrating fact-checking into the services, to put media literacy measures in place, to also to provide access to data to researchers. Indeed, as mentioned, this is also a very important element so that the research community like yours can work. So on one hand, the code and also the guidelines bring very important elements and commitments and recommendations on that you can build in your work. On the other hand, we also need your support and work on one hand to make this happen. So basically to integrate your work, let it be fact-checking, media literacy campaigns, measures, or research, so that platforms can build on that. And on the other hand, we are also very much counting on your community to check whether platforms will be doing their job. So basically, if they are actually implementing these recommendations and these commitments that they have taken in the code. So that's why we are not just very thankful for the work that BENEDMO has been doing in the past years, but we are also very much counting on the continued good work in the future, because as you know very well, disinformation is quite a complex subject. And while we certainly need strong regulation and strong work by the platforms, we also very much need civil society, fact checkers, researchers, and all this community to make also their contribution to make this a better landscape. So with that, thank you again for all your work. We count on you, and we very much appreciate the work. And I wish you with that a very good discussion this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Christina Stoom, for these encouraging and kind words. And very useful to see the broader context of the European strategy against disinformation in which BENEDMO operates. It is now time to look at the results of BENEDMO more specifically. So I would like to give the floor to Verre Wouters, who will showcase our fact-checking results specifically. He is a researcher at the University of Keulen, excuse me, of Leuven. Research at the University of Leuven, and he's also editor-in-chief of FactCheck Vlaanderen. Verre, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Julia. You fact-checked yourself really fast there. Let me try sharing my screen. Okay, I hope everyone can see my screen now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I'm happy to present you the results of our fact-checking work we did. And I just have 10 minutes, so let's go. The results I will be showing come from our trend reports, in which we monitor the fact-checking articles published by the BENEDMO partners. We've covered a period of 30 months from September 21 to February 24. And for this, we make use of our own BENEDMO database tool, which will be presented in the first breakout session. And we have manually coded the fact checks for date or topic, judgment, claim, and so on. During these 30 months, together, we've published a beautifully rounded number of 1,250 fact checks. And this is thanks to the work of our Olympic team of fact check partners of BENEDMO, which are FactCheck Vlaanderen, VRT Nieuws, Knak, Pointer, and Nieuwscheckers. Around 40% of the fact-checked content were textual statements, which can be claims found on websites or in messages on social media. And more than half of the fact-checked content is visual material, so which can be either videos or images. These are often concern footage of war, of protests, of natural disasters, like the earthquake in Turkey and Syria of last year. And there's also a small part which are audio files that are being fact-checked. Perhaps unsurprisingly, a majority, 6 on 10 claims that have been fact-checked were found on social media. Other sources where fact-checkers find their claims are regular media, are statements made by politicians, or anonymous conspiracy websites. About 3/4 of all fact-check content were later labeled by these fact checkers as being false, or at least partially false. So it's important to note that while most information turned out to be false, fact checkers not only debunk false information, but also investigate true information, or information of which they found out that it's actually insubstantiated. This true information is more often found within the regular media and in statements made by politicians compared to messages on social media. When it comes to the topics of our fact checks, health is by a far distance the #1 topic, followed by climate and environment and the war in Ukraine. Other important topics include crime, migration, economy, and so on. And the golden medal for the health topic is in big part due to fact checks on the COVID vaccine or just COVID virus in general, which accounts for almost 200 fact checks on its own. And you have to remember, we only started counting in the end of 21. The topics that have been fact-checked vary a lot over time, as you can see on this graph. So we know that misinformation flows follow important news events. So as a consequence, fact-checkers also focus on these important events. In the beginning of BENEDMO, fact-checks were still dominated by the COVID virus, which drastically changed when Russia decided to invade Ukraine, which then became the main topic. Fact checks on climate and environment are a constant during the 13 months, especially in warmer months. And in the end, the last, say, 60 months following the events of 7 October, the war in Gaza, the war between Hamas and Israel, resulted in a huge peak of fact checks on this topic. And lastly, aside from all these topics, the Dutch fact checkers also managed to fact check the elections, of which 3 took place in the Netherlands in the past 30 months. So let's focus on some of these topics. As I already mentioned, health was quite dominant in the first months of BENEDMO due to the coronavirus, but health on its own is still a very important topic in fact-checking, which can go from dodgy medicines to weird food advice. So a lot of false claims on the COVID vaccine we found out were referring to the so-called Pfizer papers, and we have made an analysis of this phenomenon by doing network analysis and a content analysis, and you can still find the results of this report on our website. In the year 2022, the war of Ukraine was by far the most important topic. This concerned a lot of important moments during the war. For example, the massacre in Bucha. For example, this post on social media was claiming that the massacre was actually staged, and this video would prove that Ukrainian soldiers were actually placing the corpses in Bucha. But fact checkers from CNAC found out it was not true at all. These Ukrainian soldiers were actually checking if there were any booby traps underneath the corpses. They were not placing the corpses there. Other misinformation on Ukraine focuses on specific people. Here you can see an article from a Belgian newspaper who said that General Pavel, that's the man we can see there, an old, not so skinny man, was appointed by Putin as a leader of the special forces of the Russian army. and it was investigated by fact checkers from VRT News, and they found this is not General Pavel at all. It's actually a guy called Ivan Turchin, and they even managed to find his social media account, and it turns out to be just a former border guard who is still enjoying his retirement. Climate and environment are a constant source for misinformation, which will likely be also the case in the future. And this kind of claims target a lot of renewables like wind energy. For example, in here, a Dutch website claimed that wind turbines lose as much as 62 kilograms of microplastics in the environment each year. Fact Check Vlaanderen found out that the website really misapplied the data from a study, and in reality, the erosion material of turbines is much lower, more like 50 grams. This is also a fun example. This is an article from The Guardian, which said that the Dutch city of Haarlem became the world's first to ban meat adverts in public. And news checkers found that it's true that there were new rules of the city on public advertising, which should promote more sustainable products. But there was actually no mention of meat at all in these rules. And what's more, the rules also applied only to a few advertisements, for example, in this bus shelter. In the last 6 months of BENEDMO, Gaza really popped out as the most important topic, of which we saw a lot of content going around on social media. And as with the war in Ukraine, there were a lot of claims that the war was actually staged. And this is like an important misinformation narrative called Pellywood, which claims that the victims of the war in Palestine are played by actors. So for example, in this post, there's a guy who lost his leg during a bombing, and they were claiming that this was played by the actor on the right. But fact checkers investigated this, and they found out that these are just two completely different persons. And if you look at other pictures of them, they don't even look that much alike. Lastly, like I said, there are also 3 elections that took place during the 30 months of BENEDMO. And for this, the Dutch fact checkers collaborated in so-called fact check marathons. They gathered together in one newsroom, fact checking the political campaigns. And usually the fact checks that we make during elections or fact checking statements of politicians in general are mostly on data for migration or economy. But also in the past 30 months, the possibilities of generative AI dramatically improved, and which resulted in a new kind of disinformation. And this photo is AI generated. You see here Frans Timmermans, which is the leader of the merger list of Greens and Socialists in the Netherlands. And he's portrayed as being on a luxury private jet, enjoying what I guess is AI's interpretation of fancy food in the Netherlands. So in a wrap, that was an overview of our fact-checking work. If you want to find more about what we do on fact checks or other disinformation analysis, you can find this on our website.
Thank you, Verre Wouters of the University of Leuven. I took that insult towards Dutch food personally. There's one question in the chat that I would like you to address in the shortest way possible, because we're a little bit over time already. Karim Dada asks, what do you exactly mean with these topics? Do you mean that there was a lot of false information about these topics, or do you mean that a lot of checks needed to be done for these topics? Can you clarify?
This is just the topics. Yeah, we recorded all fact checks, and these were just the topics of these fact checks. So I guess there's a lot of misinformation going around on these topics, and as a consequence, fact checkers also focus on these topics. But they don't. I mean, this say something about the fact checks, but not necessarily about misinformation being spread.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a very important nuance indeed. Thank you, Vera. We'll now take a brief moment to still reflect on two other integral components of our work for BENEDMO, which is first our network activities, and then our media literacy initiatives. And after that, we will take a look into the future. For now, I would like to ask Maaike Reinout. She works for the University of Leiden to present the efforts that we've taken to build and foster our network of disinformation experts.
Yes, hello everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Well, as Julia already mentioned, my name is Maaike Reinout and I work for Leiden University. And today I will tell you something about the work that I've done with regard to the BENEDMO network. So when I first started working for BENEDMO, I noticed that there were a lot of people with knowledge about fact-checking and disinformation, but that these people were not really working together. So that's why we created a network in which experts coming from different disciplines came together to share knowledge and find each other better. And in this network, we have academics, developers, journalists, media professionals, media literacy experts, and some other disinformation experts. And our network currently numbers 211 individuals, so that's quite a good number. Next slide, please. In order to nourish the network, we have organized several events, such as webinars, conferences, and live networking sessions. And some of the pictures of these events you can see on this slide. Next slide, please. We have also sent 13 monthly newsletters to keep our network members updated on the project's progress and upcoming events. And the newsletter also provided our network members with an opportunity to share their work and their events. So that was also very useful. Yes, next slide, please. And finally, we've created an expert inventory on the BENEDMO website to provide journalists and other stakeholders with an overview of experts that they can contact, for example, for news articles or other articles. So that was my very brief presentation. Now I'd like to give the floor back to Julia.
Thank you very much, Maaike Reinout from the University of Leiden. Yeah, with only 2 slides, I will shed some light on our media literacy related activities. We have undertaken efforts both aimed at journalists and media professionals and to improve their resilience against disinformation, as well as for the general audience, general public. We've done several studies into the needs and available resources for both these target groups. And based on these findings, we developed workshops and masterclasses. We also used insights to work on several resources that support the resilience against disinformation. And to make this a bit more tangible, I show an overview of our resources. One of our primary achievements in media literacy is the launch of a secondary education program comprising 4 individual lessons designed for teachers' use. And this program builds upon a lesson series that was initially developed in another EU project, which is called SMILES. We've expanded the curriculum to include a dedicated lesson on comprehending the significance and the workings of journalism. And the other 3 lessons we have refined and updated with insights and content from our BENEDMO consortium. The series of lessons is now accessible on a platform called Lesson Up, which is used by over 50,000 teachers in the Dutch language only. And it will support teachers in planning their lessons about the topic of disinformation. And to quickly run through the other examples on the slides, we recognize that there is an abundance of resources available. So we curated a selection of resources that are easy to use and of high quality, so that we help teachers in selecting their tools for their classrooms. To interact with the audience directly, with the general public directly, we opened temporary exhibitions about information, media, and elections. This exhibition will be updated and again presented during the European elections, and it showcases work from several of our partners. For journalists and lesser experienced fact checkers, we created a verification starter pack, which will guide them through the most essential tools and methods for fact checking and for verifying information. So I know this was a very quick and short summary. So if you would like to learn more about these resources and learn more about the background and context, you can always reach out, and I'm happy to go into more detail. And then for now, I would like to give the word to Wim van Opbergen, who will look who will take a first look into the future. And he's project manager at VRT, and he will share some exciting fact-checking plans. And maybe it's easiest if I keep sharing my screen, Wim.
Yeah, actually, that's good. Ooh.
Wim, you are still muted.
Yes, all right. That should be better. That's correct. Yes, sorry, I'm sitting next to my colleague Nikki, so we're, you know, in a muting battle for not interrupting this this call with strange noises. But nice to meet you all. So what I can actually announce here, and I think at BENEDMO we're kind of proudly to be able to announce this, is that we are actually organizing a first Belgian-Dutch fact check marathon in at the end of May until yeah, let's say the 9th of June. So what is fact check marathon actually all about? So the let's say the reason why that's set up is because there are European elections coming, and of course European election time in general, be it on a European scale or at local or regional or national scale, it's always a time when there's a lot of disinformation spreading, where a lot of claims are often made by political parties, a lot of images are used. But of course, citizens are confronted with a lot of questions. Can I believe those statements? Are the predictions real? Are the images I'm confronted with of the statements, are they actually real? What are the effects of that? And so that's why within BENEDMO, several partners from Belgium or Flanders and the Netherlands have joined hands. So it's the VRT where I'm working, it's Pointer from the Netherlands, it's Algemene Dagblad, and news checkers. And I see also Peter Burger is here present from news checkers. And so actually we are going to gather physically in Brussels at VRT from the 27th of May until the 9th of June. And we are going to do fact checks about those European elections. So what are the candidates saying, what's at stake, and so on. That idea of fact check marathon, it's not new. Our Dutch partners already have had some experiences with setting that up. So we're building on those experiences. They did it already, I think, 3 times. I think the first time was in 2022 for the local elections in the Netherlands, and the last time was in March 2023, if I'm not mistaken, for I think it's the provincial elections. But also interesting to know, next to that BENEDMO initiative, at the same moment, Flemish and Belgian partners that are also participating into BENEDMO are actually also doing a more local oriented fact check marathon, because at the same time that we have European elections in Belgium, we also have regional elections and federal, or let's say Belgium national elections. And at that moment, actually, those BENEDMO partners are actually joined by the checkers, NAC and RTBF, which are also important media outlets in Belgium. The checkers is more like a fact check platform in Flanders, established 2 years ago. What's also important, that's actually the ambition we have to do with that fact check marathon, is that we at least also for the European elections try to produce a minimum of 2 fact checks a day in either a text format, a video format, or an audio format. And we will also try to test some innovative tools along that marathon. So I would say, please stay in touch with BENEDMO about this initiative, and please do not hesitate to contact me or Peter Berger if you have additional questions about the initiative. I also should apologize our news chef, Griete Kraan, who would normally attend here today, but there was an urgency at VRT which actually did not allow her to present the Fact Check Marathon today. So thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Wim from VRT. And with news, it's always hard to prioritize things like this. Yes, and now it's time to share our news about the future. I actually think that Christina Stoomp already gave away our scoop at the beginning of this session, but we are very happy to share that BENEDMO has been granted new funding from the Digital Europe program, so we can continue our work and keep building on this hub that we've established. We are also very happy that our consortium remains intact. We will keep working with the same partners, but we are also very excited to include 2 additional partners to our team. You can recognize them by the hearts next to the name. Mediawijs will be joining us, mostly focusing on media literacy activities, and the Checkers is added as an associate partner. As for our activities, our pillars, as Johan also explained in the beginning of this session, those will remain intact, very similar. But we did put some new emphasis within each. We moved the emphasis around a little bit within each of these activities. So we will continue to work on fact-checking and analysis of disinformation narratives. And we aim to collaborate more closely, not just with our own consortium, but also with the international ETMO network. And attention will also go specifically to the development of innovative formats to reach broader audiences. We will continue to grow and foster the BENEDMO network on the guidance of KU Leuven. So if you're not a member yet and you work professionally with the topic of disinformation, please register. Here we will start with a needs analysis to make sure that you will actually benefit from our activities. And we hope to also expand our network with civil society, and I'm thinking of, for example, domain experts of areas that are affected by disinformation. The research efforts will include monitoring the impact of platform policies, for example, the Code of Practice on Disinformation. And we are particularly interested in AI, including generative AI, and the impact both on the spread of disinformation, but also on the fight against disinformation. And AI will, of course, also play an important role in our upcoming media literacy activities. The Flemish and Dutch partners will exchange knowledge and resources to increase the impact of already existing resources. And in that same thought, we will also collaborate on reaching specific vulnerables group and adjust already existing materials to the needs of specific vulnerable groups. I think we might have some time for questions if we happen to have any. I mean, we also all can have coffee before we continue our next meetings and work obligations, but let's see if there are any questions popping up. Or maybe someone from the consortium wanted to add something to what I just said. No, it's the time to round up.
To continue, so
okay.
You can do it.
Then for the final words, I really want to thank the BENEDMO consortium. Also personally, I just had a really wonderful and fruitful 30 months with this very skilled and nice group of people. And I really look forward to continuing our work. And I would also like to thank all of you, the participants to this webinar, for your attention and engagement. I hope we can stay in contact and maybe also strengthen the bonds between all of us. So please feel free to reach out to us at any moment. You'll have another 30 months to find us. And if there are no final questions, then this is where we round up the webinar. Thank you all very much.